The woman collapsed face first into the snow, her wedding dress turning red beneath her. "Papa! Papa, look!" 5-year-old Samuel Mercer broke free from his father's grip and ran toward the fallen stranger, his small boots kicking up powder. "Sammy, no." But the boy had already reached her, already turned her over, already seen her face. "Papa." His voice trembled. "Papa, she looks like the lady in your picture, the one you hide under your pillow." Elijah Mercer's blood turned to ice. If you're watching from New York to California, from Texas to Montana, stay with me until the very end. Subscribe now and comment your city below so I can see how far this story of loss and redemption travels. Now let me take you back to the winter of 1889, to a snow-covered train platform where everything changed. The December wind cut through Bitter Creek Station like a knife through flesh. Elijah Mercer pulled his collar higher and cursed under his breath. The supply train was late again, and his boy was getting restless. "Papa, I'm cold." "I know, son." Eli crouched down and adjusted Sammy's scarf. "Train'll be here soon. Then we'll get your new boots and head home." "Can we get peppermints too?" "We'll see." The platform held maybe a dozen souls, all of them hunched against the bitter cold. Ranchers waiting for feed shipments. A couple of women clutching parcels. Old Zeke Pruitt sitting on his usual bench whittling something that would never quite become anything. Eli heard the whistle before he saw the smoke. The locomotive appeared through the swirling snow like a black ghost, slowing with a screech of metal that made Sammy cover his ears. "She's here, Papa." "Stay close to me." The train shuddered to a stop. Steam billowed across the platform, mixing with snow until everything turned white for a moment. Eli kept one hand on Sammy's shoulder, watching the passenger car doors. A businessman stepped off first, then a young couple, then an old woman with a carpet bag, then her. Eli's hand tightened on Sammy's shoulder so hard the boy yelped, "Papa, you're hurting me." He couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything but stare at the woman standing in the doorway of the passenger car. She wore a wedding dress. White silk, or it had been white once. Now it was torn at the hem, stained with mud and something darker. Her hair hung loose around her face, tangled and wild. Her feet were bare despite the snow. And her eyes. God help him, he knew those eyes. "That ain't possible," he whispered. The woman swayed in the doorway. Her hand gripped the rail so tight her knuckles went white. She took one step down, then another. Then her legs gave out entirely. She fell. Sammy tore free before Eli could stop him. "No, Sammy!" But the boy was already there, already kneeling in the snow beside the fallen woman, already brushing hair back from her face with his small mittened hands. "Papa, she's hurt. There's blood." Eli forced his legs to move. Every step felt like walking through deep water. The other people on the platform had stopped what they were doing, staring at the scene unfolding before them. "Step back, son." "But Papa," "I said, step back." He crouched down beside her. Up close he could see the bruises on her wrists, purple and yellow and fresh. Could see the cut on her forehead still seeping blood. Could see the way her chest barely moved with each shallow breath. And he could see her face. 4 years. 4 years since he'd seen that face. 4 years since she'd looked him in the eye and told him she didn't love him, had never loved him, that their time together had been a mistake. 4 years since Clara May Thornton had shattered his heart into pieces so small he'd never found them all. "Papa." Sammy's voice was small, scared. "Papa? Why does she look like the picture lady? Hush now." "But she does, Papa. She looks just like—" "I said hush." The sharpness in his voice made Sammy flinch. Eli immediately felt sick, but he couldn't deal with that now. Couldn't deal with any of this. "Someone get Doc Bennett," he shouted. The crowd just stared. "Now!" A young ranch hand finally broke away running toward town. The rest kept staring, their eyes moving between Eli and the unconscious woman and the little boy who kept reaching for her face. "She needs warmth." This from widow Josephine Calloway, who ran the boarding house. She pushed through the gawkers and knelt beside Eli, pressing her fingers to the woman's neck. "Pulse is weak. She's half frozen. We need to get her inside." "I don't want her inside anywhere." The widow's eyes snapped to his face. "Elijah Mercer, I don't care what history you've got with this woman. She'll die if she stays out here." "Maybe that's what she deserves." The words came out before he could stop them. Hard words, cruel words. The words of a man who'd spent 4 years nursing a wound that never healed. "Papa." Sammy was crying now, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Papa, you can't mean that. You can't." Eli looked at his son, at the fear and confusion in those eyes that looked so much like hers, and something inside him cracked. "Fine." He bent down and gathered the woman in his arms. She weighed nothing less than nothing, like the years had hollowed her out from the inside. "But she's not staying at my place. Widow Calloway, you got a room." "Always." He carried her through the snow, aware of every eye on him, aware of the whispers already starting. By nightfall, the whole territory would know that Clara May Thornton had come back to Bitter Creek. By morning, everyone would have an opinion about what it meant. The boarding house was warm, almost too warm, after the bitter cold outside. Widow Calloway led him to a small room on the second floor, clean and spare, with a narrow bed and a washstand. "Put her there. Gently now." Eli laid her down on the bed and stepped back fast, like she might burn him if he touched her too long. Sammy tried to climb up beside her, but Eli caught him. "No, son, we're leaving." "But Papa, she's hurt. Doc Bennett will take care of her." "But I want to stay. I want to make sure she's okay." "Why?" The question came out sharper than intended. "Why do you care about some stranger?" Sammy's lower lip trembled. "She's not a stranger. She's the picture lady. The one you talk to sometimes when you think I'm sleeping." Eli's throat closed. He'd thought he'd been careful. Thought his nighttime conversations with a faded photograph were his secret shame alone. "That's different," he managed. "How?" He didn't have an answer. The doctor arrived in a flurry of cold air and medical bag. Horace Bennett was pushing 60, but still sharp, still capable, still the only thing passing for medical care within 50 miles. "Everyone out," he ordered. "Except Josephine. I'll need help." Eli grabbed Sammy's hand and pulled him toward the door. "Wait." Doc Bennett was looking at the woman's face, now his expression shifting from professional concern to personal recognition. "Eli, is this—" "Don't." "But she's—" "I said don't." Eli's voice could have frozen the room colder than the storm outside. "Tend to her injuries, that's all. I don't want to hear anything else." He left before the doctor could respond, dragging Sammy down the stairs and out into the snow. The cold hit him like a slap, welcome after the suffocating warmth inside. "Papa, slow down. My legs aren't as long as yours." Eli stopped, looked down at his son, saw the confusion and hurt and fear all tangled together on that small face. He crouched down, ignoring the snow soaking through his trousers. "I'm sorry, son. I shouldn't have yelled." "Who is she, Papa, really?" The question deserved a real answer. Sammy was old enough to understand some things, even if he was too young for the whole ugly truth. "She's someone I knew a long time ago, before you were born." "Did you love her?" The directness of children. No dancing around the point. No polite deflection. "Yeah." The words scraped out of his throat like broken glass. "Yeah, I loved her." "What happened?" "She left." "Why?" "I don't know." It was the first honest answer he'd given. "I've asked myself that question every day for 4 years, son. Never did find an answer that made sense." Sammy was quiet for a moment, processing this the way children do, with that peculiar mixture of acceptance and confusion. "Maybe she'll tell you now," he finally said, "now that she's back." Maybe. But Eli didn't want to hear her explanations, didn't want to hear her excuses, didn't want to hear anything that might make him understand, because understanding meant forgiving, and forgiving meant opening up that wound all over again. They walked back to where their wagon waited old Zeke Pruitt, watching them with knowing eyes. "Hell of a thing," Zeke said, not asking a question. "Stay out of it, Zeke." "Wasn't planning on getting in." The old man went back to his whittling. "Just saying, hell of a thing is all." Eli loaded Sammy into the wagon and climbed up beside him. The horses were restless from the cold, eager to move. "We're not getting my new boots. We'll come back another day." "But Papa." "Another day, Sammy." The boy fell silent, and Eli hated himself for taking his anger out on his son. But he couldn't stay in town. Couldn't risk running into someone who wanted to talk about what had happened. Couldn't risk his carefully constructed walls crumbling any further. The ride back to the ranch took nearly 2 hours in the heavy snow. By the time they arrived, the light was fading, and both of them were frozen through. Eli got Sammy inside, built up the fire, and heated leftover stew for dinner. Normal things, routine things, things he could do without thinking, without feeling, without acknowledging the earthquake that had just shaken the foundations of his entire life. "Papa?" "Yes, son." "The picture lady, is she my mama?" The spoon clattered against the bowl. Stew splattered across the rough-hewn table. "What makes you ask that?" "You said she left before I was born. And I don't have a mama. And she looks like me. My eyes are the same color as hers." Eli's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the table to stop the trembling. "We're not talking about this." "But Papa." "Not tonight. Not ever. You hear me?" His voice rose despite his best efforts. "That woman is nothing to you. Nothing to either of us. She made her choice 4 years ago, and we've done just fine without her." Sammy's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't argue. Just pushed his bowl away and climbed down from his chair. "I'm not hungry anymore." "Sammy." But the boy was already gone, disappearing into his small room and closing the door with a quiet click that somehow hurt worse than a slam would have. Eli sat alone at the table, staring at his untouched food, wondering how the world could change so completely in the span of a single afternoon. She was back. Clara May Thornton was back. And he had no idea what he was supposed to do about it. Sleep didn't come that night. Eli lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside and thinking about things he'd promised himself he'd never think about again. He'd met her in Philadelphia, spring of 1884. He'd been 27 years old, flush with cash from a successful cattle sale, feeling like the world was his for the taking. She'd been working in her father's office doing the books, though he'd later learned she wasn't supposed to be there at all. Cornelius Thornton didn't believe in women working, but Clara had a way of doing things she wasn't supposed to do. He'd noticed her eyes first, green as summer grass, bright with an intelligence that most men probably found threatening. He'd found it beautiful. "You're staring," she'd said, not looking up from her ledger. "Sorry, ma'am, didn't mean to offend." "I'm not offended, just observant." She'd finally raised her eyes then, and the impact had nearly knocked him backwards. "You're the rancher from Wyoming Territory." "Yes, ma'am, Elijah Mercer." "Clara Thornton." "Thornton." He'd glanced toward the closed door of her father's private office. As in the name on the building, and on the checks you're hoping to receive. A hint of a smile had played at her lips. "Don't worry, I won't tell Father you were making eyes at his daughter." "I wasn't." "You were. But like I said, I'm not offended." That had been the beginning. Stolen conversations that turned into stolen meetings, that turned into stolen kisses, that turned into a love so consuming, Eli had lost all sense of reason. She'd left Philadelphia with him, packed one small bag, and walked away from everything she'd ever known. They'd traveled to Wyoming Territory by train, then by stagecoach, then by horseback. She'd never complained, not once. They'd married in a tiny church outside Bitter Creek with old Zeke and widow Calloway as witnesses. She'd worn a simple blue dress, and she'd been the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. For almost a year they'd been happy, really happy. She'd learned to cook on a wood stove, learned to preserve food for winter, learned to handle a rifle. She'd been terrible at first, and then better, and then good enough to bring down a buck from 200 yards. And then she'd gotten pregnant. Eli had been terrified and ecstatic in equal measure. A baby. His baby. Their baby. Sammy had been born in August of 1885 during the hottest summer anyone could remember. Clara had labored for 18 hours, and when it was finally over, when Eli had held his son for the first time, he'd thought his heart might actually burst from loving them both so much. For 8 months, everything had been perfect. Then Cornelius Thornton had found them. Eli still remembered that night. The pounding on the door just before dawn. The men who'd pushed past him into his own home. Clara's screams as they'd dragged her away. "You have no right!" Eli had shouted, fighting against the arms holding him back. "I have every right." Cornelius Thornton had stood in the doorway, his face twisted with disgust. "She's my daughter, and she's clearly not in her right mind, running off with some dirt-poor rancher, living in squalor." "This isn't squalor. It's not fit for a dog, let alone a Thornton." "Papa," Clara had screamed. "Papa, please, let me go. Let me stay with my husband, with my baby." "You don't have a husband. That marriage wasn't legal. I've had it annulled." "You can't do that." "I already have." Cornelius had turned to Eli, then his eyes cold as the wind outside. "She'll be returned to Philadelphia where she belongs. She'll receive proper treatment for her condition." "What condition?" "There's nothing wrong with her." "Hysteria," Cornelius had said flatly. "Delusions of romantic love. A common affliction among young women. The doctors will cure her." "You're insane." "No, Mr. Mercer, I'm rich, which means I decide what's real and what isn't." He'd stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If you try to come after her, if you try to contact her, if you so much as write her name on a piece of paper, I will destroy you. I will take everything you have, your land, your cattle, your son. I will make sure no one in this territory will do business with you. Do you understand?" Eli had understood. He'd hated it, but he'd understood. They'd taken Clara into the night, her screams echoing long after the wagon had disappeared. Sammy had woken and cried for hours, sensing somehow that something terrible had happened. 2 weeks later, a letter had arrived. Clara's handwriting, or a close approximation of it. "Elijah, I've had time to think clearly away from your influence. I realize now that I made a terrible mistake. I never loved you. I was simply rebelling against my father, and you were convenient. I'm returning to my real life now, the life I was meant for. Please don't try to contact me. For both our sakes, pretend our time together never happened. Clara." He'd read that letter 100 times, searching for some sign that it was a forgery, some proof that the words weren't real. He'd never found any. Over time, he'd convinced himself it was genuine, that she'd been using him all along, that the love he'd thought they shared had been nothing but a rich girl's fantasy, discarded the moment it became inconvenient. It was easier that way. Easier to hate her than to mourn her. Easier to survive. Morning came gray and cold. Eli had maybe slept an hour, maybe less. His eyes felt like sandpaper, and his head pounded from the whiskey he'd drunk sometime around midnight. Sammy was subdued at breakfast, eating his porridge in silence, not meeting Eli's eyes. "Son, I don't want to talk about it, Papa." The words, so adult coming from such a small mouth, cut deep. "We need to check the cattle in the north pasture," Eli said finally. "Storm might have scattered them." "Can I stay home?" "You know the rules. When I work, you work." "Yes, sir." They bundled up and headed out into the cold. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving the world white and hushed. Beautiful if you had eyes to see it. Eli didn't. They'd been riding for about an hour when Sammy suddenly pointed. "Someone's coming." Eli's hand went to his rifle. Out here, unexpected visitors were rarely good news. But as the figure drew closer, he recognized the horse, one of Widow Calloway's, and the rider. He pulled his horse to a stop, his jaw tight. "She's awake." The widow's breath plumed in the cold air. "And she's asking for you." "I don't care." "Elijah?" "I said I don't care. She can ask all she wants. I've got nothing to say to her." The widow's eyes softened with something that might have been pity. "She's asking about Samuel too." Eli's blood ran cold. "She doesn't get to ask about my son." "Your son Eli, he's my son." The words came out fierce, protective. "I've raised him for 5 years. Fed him, clothed him, sat up with him when he was sick. She lost any right to call him hers the day she walked away." Did she walk away, or was she taken? The question hit like a physical blow. "What did she tell you?" "Things that don't sound like the story you've been believing all these years." The widow urged her horse closer. "I'm not saying you have to forgive her. I'm just saying maybe you should hear her out before you make up your mind." "I made up my mind 4 years ago." "Then unmake it." Her voice sharpened. "Eli, I've known you since you came to this territory. You're a good man, a fair man. Don't let old pain make you into someone cruel." Eli looked away toward the endless white horizon. "Papa?" Sammy's small voice cut through his thoughts. "Papa, I want to see her." "No." "But," I said no. "That's not fair." "Life's not fair, son." The words tasted bitter on his tongue. "The sooner you learn that, the better." He kicked his horse forward, not waiting to see if the widow followed. Behind him, he heard Sammy's quiet sobs, and each one felt like a knife between his ribs. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Because stopping meant turning around, and turning around meant seeing her, and seeing her meant he didn't know what it meant, and he wasn't ready to find out. 3 days passed. 3 days of pretending nothing had changed. 3 days of avoiding town. 3 days of Sammy growing quieter and more withdrawn. On the 4th morning, Eli woke to find his son's bed empty. "Sammy?" He checked the outhouse. Empty. The barn. Empty. The chicken coop. Empty. Panic clawed at his throat. "Sammy?" Nothing. Just wind and snow and silence. He saddled his horse with hands that shook. His son was 5 years old, too young to survive alone in this cold for long. He followed the small footprints leading away from the house. They headed east, toward town, toward her. Eli rode faster than was safe, pushing his horse until foam flew from its mouth. The footprints stayed clear in the snow, small and determined, the path of a boy on a mission. He found them at the boarding house. Sammy sat on the edge of Clara's bed holding her hand. She was awake, propped up on pillows, her face pale, but her eyes, those green eyes he'd never stopped dreaming about, locked on the boy like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Samuel James Mercer." Both of them jumped. Sammy's face went white with fear, but he didn't let go of Clara's hand. "Papa, I had to come. I had to." "You left the house without permission. In winter. Alone." Eli's voice shook with rage and relief. "Do you have any idea what could have happened? I was careful." "Careful isn't good enough. You could have frozen to death. You could have—" He stopped, unable to finish. Clara spoke then, her voice rough but steady. "He's safe. That's what matters." "Don't." Eli held up a hand. "Don't you dare speak to me about what matters." "Eli." "Don't call me that either. You don't get to use my name like we're still like we're—" He couldn't say it. "Sammy, we're leaving. Now." "No." The defiance in his son's voice stopped him cold. "What did you say?" "I said no." Tears streamed down Sammy's face, but his jaw was set with a stubbornness Eli recognized all too well, because it was his stubbornness, his and hers combined in this small, fierce boy. "I'm not leaving until someone tells me the truth." "The truth about what?" "About her." Sammy pointed at Clara. "About why she looks like me. About why you have her picture. About why she's crying when she looks at me like that." Eli looked at Clara, then really looked at her for the first time since she'd fallen off that train. And she was crying. Silent tears tracking down her hollow cheeks. "Tell him," she whispered. "Please, Eli. If you ever loved me at all, tell him. You don't get to ask me for anything." "I'm not asking for me." Her voice broke. "I'm asking for him. He deserves to know." Sammy looked between them, his small face twisted with confusion and hope and fear. "Know what? What do I deserve to know?" The silence stretched, and finally, something inside Eli cracked open. "She's your mother, Sammy, the picture lady. She's your mother." The word hung in the air. Mother. Sammy turned to Clara, his eyes huge. "Is it true? Are you really my mama?" Clara's composure shattered. She reached for him with trembling hands, pulled him close, buried her face in his hair. "Yes, baby. Yes, I'm your mama. I've always been your mama. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Sammy clung to her small arms, wrapped tight around her neck. "I knew it. I knew you weren't gone. Papa said you went away, but I knew. I dreamed about you. You used to sing to me. You used to call me your little light." Clara sobbed harder. "You remember. Oh God, you remember." Eli watched them hold each other. Mother and son reunited after 4 years and felt his heart tearing in 2 different directions. Because part of him wanted to tear them apart, wanted to grab his son and run, wanted to pretend none of this was happening. But another part, a part he'd tried so hard to kill, wanted to believe, wanted to hope, wanted her back. "Why did you leave?" His voice came out rough, barely controlled. Clara lifted her head from Sammy's hair. Her eyes met his, and he saw fear there, but also something else. Something like steel. "I didn't leave." Each word was precise, deliberate. "I was taken, dragged out of our home while you were being held down, locked in a private asylum for 3 years, told I was insane, told you didn't want me anymore, told our son was dead." The room went very still. "They told you Sammy was dead. They told me he died of fever 3 weeks after I was taken." Her voice cracked but didn't break. "I mourned him, Eli. I mourned our baby every single day for 3 years, until 6 months ago, when I finally escaped and learned the truth." "That's not—" Eli struggled to breathe. "That's not what the letter said." "What letter?" "The one you sent. Telling me you never loved me. Telling me to forget you." Clara's face went white. "I never wrote that letter. I never—" She stopped. "My father. He must have— How do I know you're not lying now? You don't." She held his gaze. "You don't know. You have no reason to trust me after everything that's happened. But I'm telling you the truth, Eli. I swear on our son's life. I never stopped loving you. I never stopped fighting to get back to you." Eli wanted to believe her. God, how he wanted to believe her. But 4 years of pain didn't disappear because of a few words spoken in a boarding house room. "Papa," Sammy's voice was small but clear. "Papa, I believe her." "Son." She cried when she said my name. She remembered the songs. "She smells like the perfume bottle you keep in your drawer, the one you think I don't know about." Eli closed his eyes. The perfume. The one that still held her scent after all these years. The one he'd pressed to his face on his darkest nights. His son had noticed. His son had remembered. His son had forgiven. "Please," Clara whispered. "I'm not asking you to love me again. I'm not asking for anything except a chance. A chance to prove I'm telling the truth. A chance to know my son." Eli opened his eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, he let himself really see her. Not the ghost. Not the memory. Not the villain he'd created in his mind to make the loss bearable. Just Clara, thinner than she'd been, worn down, broken in places that might never heal, but still fighting, still here, still his. "1 week," he heard himself say. "You get 1 week. You can see Sammy during the day. You can prove whatever you need to prove. But at the end of that week, if I have any reason at all to think you're lying, you leave, and you never come back." Clara's breath caught. "I'll take it. I'll take whatever you give me. Don't make me regret this." "I won't." She was crying again, but smiling too. A broken, beautiful smile he remembered from another lifetime. "I won't, Eli. I promise." Sammy looked between them, hope blazing in his eyes. "Does this mean we're going to be a family?" Neither adult answered, but for the first time in 4 years, Eli didn't say no. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The wagon ride back to the ranch was silent, except for the crunch of snow beneath the wheels. Eli kept his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his jaw set in a hard line that Sammy knew better than to test. Clara sat in the back of the wagon, wrapped in a borrowed coat that hung loose on her thin frame. She hadn't stopped looking at Sammy since they'd left town, drinking in every detail of him like a woman dying of thirst. "You're staring," Sammy said, not unkindly. "I'm sorry, I just—" Clara's voice caught. "You're so big now. When I last held you, you fit in my arms." "I'm 5 3/4, almost 6. "I know. Your birthday is in August. August 14th at 3 in the morning. You came into the world screaming so loud I thought the roof might come off." Sammy's eyes went wide. "Papa never told me that part." "There's a lot your papa never told you." Eli's shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge he'd heard. The ranch appeared through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney where the morning fire still burned. It looked smaller than Clara remembered, rougher, but also more real than anything she'd seen in 4 years. "This is home?" she asked. "This is home," Sammy said proudly. "Papa built most of it himself, the barn too, and the chicken coop, but I helped with that part." "Did you?" I handed him the nails. Clara smiled, and even Eli felt something loosen in his chest at the sound of her quiet laugh. "That's very important work," she said. Eli pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down without a word. He moved to help Sammy, but the boy had already scrambled over the side and was reaching up to help Clara instead. "Careful, Mama. The step's icy." Mama. The word hung in the cold air. Eli watched Clara's face crumple and rebuild itself in the space of a heartbeat. "Thank you, sweetheart." She took Sammy's small hand and let him guide her down her bare feet from the train now wrapped in bandages and borrowed boots 2 sizes too large. "You'll stay in the barn." Both Clara and Sammy turned at Eli's flat pronouncement. "The barn," Sammy protested. "But Papa, it's cold out there." "There's a room in the back. Dry has a stove. It's where the hired hands sleep during roundup." "But—" "She's not sleeping in the house, Sammy." Eli finally looked at Clara, his eyes hard. "That's not negotiable." Clara nodded quickly. "The barn is fine. The barn is more than fine. I've slept in worse places these past months." Something flickered across Eli's face. Curiosity, maybe, or concern, but he crushed it before it could take root. "I'll show you where everything is. Then we've got work to do. The cattle in the north pasture need checking." "I can help." Eli stopped mid-stride. "What?" "I said I can help. I remember how to ride. I remember how to work." Clara lifted her chin, a ghost of the stubborn woman he'd married showing through. "You gave me a week to prove myself. I intend to use every minute of it. You can barely stand. I'm stronger than I look. You're half dead. Then I'll work half dead." She met his eyes without flinching. "I'm not here to be a burden, Eli. I'm here to earn my place." The silence stretched between them, filled with 4 years of pain and anger, and something else neither of them was ready to name. "Fine," Eli said finally. "But if you slow me down, you stay behind. Understood?" "Understood." He showed her the barn room, which was small but clean, with a narrow cot and a pot-bellied stove that would keep the worst of the cold at bay. She looked at it like he'd handed her a palace. "This is perfect. Thank you." "Don't thank me. You haven't earned anything yet." He turned and walked away before she could respond. The north pasture was a 2-hour ride in good weather. In the snow, it took nearly 3. Clara rode one of the older horses, a gentle mare named Bess, who seemed to sense her rider's weakness and compensated accordingly. Sammy rode with Eli, chattering the whole way about the cattle and the horses, and the time a wolf had come too close to the henhouse and Papa had shot it from 50 yards. "Did you really?" Clara asked. "It was closer to 30, Eli admitted grudgingly. "And it was more scared of us than we were of it." "Papa's the best shot in the territory. Everyone says so." "I'm adequate." "Mr. Pruitt says you could shoot the wings off a fly at 100 paces." "Zeke Pruitt says a lot of things." Clara smiled, and Eli hated how much he wanted to see it again. They found the cattle scattered across 3 different draws, spooked by the storm, and too stupid to find their way back together. Eli worked with practiced efficiency, cutting out strays and driving them back toward the main herd, while Clara and Sammy watched from a rise. "Can you show me how to do that?" Clara asked when he rode back to check on them. "It takes years to learn." "Then teach me the basics." He stared at her, trying to find the angle, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. All he saw was a woman who wanted to be useful. "Fine. Take the left flank. If any of them try to break off, turn Bess into their path. She knows what to do even if you don't." Clara nodded and rode off, her posture in the saddle rusty, but not incompetent. She'd always been a quick learner. He'd forgotten that about her. Or maybe he'd forced himself to forget. By the time they got the herd gathered and headed back toward better grazing, the sun was starting its descent toward the mountains. Clara's face was pale with exhaustion. Her bandaged hands clutched tight on the reins, but she hadn't complained once. "You did good." Eli said the words escaping before he could stop them. Clara's head snapped toward him, surprise evident in her eyes. "I mean it. For someone who hasn't ridden in years, you held your own. I had a good teacher. Once." The memory of those early days hit him like a fist to the gut. Teaching her to ride, teaching her to shoot, teaching her to survive in a land that didn't forgive weakness. Falling in love with her a little more every single day. "That was a long time ago," he said roughly. 4 years, 2 months, 17 days. He looked at her sharply. "I counted," she said quietly. "Every single day I counted. It was the only way to stay sane." Eli didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because what could he possibly say to that? They rode back to the ranch in silence, the setting sun turning the snow pink and gold. Sammy had fallen asleep against Eli's chest, worn out from the long day, his small body warm and trusting. "He's beautiful," Clara whispered. "You've done such a good job with him." "He's stubborn as a mule and twice as troublesome." "He's perfect." Eli looked down at his son, at the dark hair that was his, and the green eyes that were hers, and the fierce little spirit that belonged to both of them. "Yeah," he admitted. "He is." That night, after Sammy was in bed and the chores were done, Eli found himself standing at the window looking out toward the barn, where a faint light flickered. She was awake. Reading maybe, or just sitting in the dark, thinking about all the things they hadn't said. He should go to bed. Should stick to his plan of keeping her at arm's length for the week, then sending her on her way. Should protect himself and his son from the inevitable disappointment. Instead, he pulled on his coat and walked out into the cold. The barn door creaked when he opened it. Clara looked up from where she sat on the cot, a worn blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Is something wrong? Is Sammy?" "He's fine, sleeping." She relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained wary, waiting for him to tell her why he was here. The problem was, he didn't know himself. "Tell me what happened," he said finally. "All of it. From the night they took you." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she began to speak. "They drugged me. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't fight, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but watch while they carried me out of our home. I saw you trying to get to me. I saw the blood on your face where they'd hit you. I tried to call out, but nothing came." Eli's fists clenched at his sides. "When I woke up, I was in a room with bars on the windows, white walls, white sheets, white everything, like a tomb made of snow. They told me I was in a hospital, that I was sick, that I needed help." "The asylum." Clara nodded. "Greenfield Sanitarium. Private facility in upstate New York. Very exclusive, very discreet. The kind of place rich families send their inconvenient women." Inconvenient. That's what my father called me. His inconvenient daughter who'd run off with a poor rancher and ruined the family reputation. Her voice hardened. "He told me if I behaved, if I followed the rules and took my medicine and stopped insisting that I had a husband and child eventually, I'd be released. I'd be allowed to come home." "But you didn't behave." "No." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I fought them every day for the first year. Tried to escape 7 times. Wrote letters that were never sent. Screamed the truth at anyone who would listen." "What changed?" The smile vanished. "They broke me," she said simply. "Not all at once. Bit by bit, day by day, until I couldn't remember anymore what was real and what wasn't. They told me you'd moved on, that you'd remarried, that Sammy had died of fever and you blamed me for leaving him. And after a while, I started to believe it." Eli's throat closed. He wanted to reach for her, wanted to pull her into his arms and promise that none of it was true. But 4 years stood between them like a wall of ice. "How did you get out?" "My father decided I'd been punished enough, or maybe he just needed me for something else." Bitterness dripped from her words. 6 months ago, he had me transferred to a facility closer to Philadelphia. Said I was showing improvement. Said I might be ready to rejoin society. And then I met a nurse named Sarah who had a son Sammy's age. She asked about my family and I told her the truth. All of it. She didn't believe me at first, but she checked. She actually checked Eli. And she found out that I wasn't lying. That there was a rancher in Wyoming Territory named Elijah Mercer who was raising a 5-year-old son alone. Clara's voice broke. She told me Sammy was alive. After 3 years of being told he was dead, she told me he was alive. Jesus. Sarah helped me escape. Gave me money, clothes, a train ticket. I was supposed to come straight here, but my father caught up with me in Chicago. Her hand went unconsciously to her throat, where Eli now noticed fading bruises. He had another plan for me. A marriage to a business associate. A man named Aldridge Harwick who didn't care that I'd been in an asylum as long as he got the Thornton money. The wedding dress. Clara nodded. They held the ceremony 3 days ago. I managed to get away during the reception while everyone was distracted. Stole the first train ticket I could find and ran. She looked down at her hands. I know how it looks. A woman in a wedding dress half mad showing up to claim a child she abandoned. I know what everyone must think. What do you want me to think? I want you to believe me. Her eyes met his, fierce and desperate. I want you to look at me and see the woman you married, not the monster my father tried to turn me into. I want you to give me a chance to prove that I never stopped loving you, even when they told me you were lost to me forever." Eli stood at the edge of her small room, feeling like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Jump, and he might fly. Or he might fall. "The letter," he said. "The one I got, saying you never loved me." "I didn't write it. I swear to you, Eli. I would never. I know." She stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "I know you didn't write it." He rubbed a hand over his face, exhausted in ways sleep couldn't fix. "I think I always knew. The handwriting was close but not quite right. The words were too cold, too final. You never were good at being cold." "Then why did you believe it?" "Because believing it was easier than hoping." He finally looked at her, letting her see the full weight of what he'd carried alone for 4 years. "If you left because you didn't love me, then I could hate you. I could move on. I could survive. But if you were taken, if you were suffering while I did nothing..." His voice broke. "I couldn't live with that, so I chose to believe the lie." Clara rose from the cot and crossed the small space between them. She stopped just short of touching him, close enough that he could see the tears streaming down her face. "I don't blame you," she whispered. "I could never blame you. We were both fighting to survive. We just did it in different ways. I should have come for you. Should have torn Philadelphia apart until I found you. They would have killed you, or arrested you, or both." She shook her head. "My father had an army of lawyers and politicians and hired guns. You were one man with a baby to raise. You did what you had to do. I gave up on you. You kept our son alive." Her hand rose, trembled, then pressed gently against his chest, where his heart pounded like a war drum. "That's not giving up. That's the bravest thing you could have done." Eli caught her wrist, felt the scars there, the ridges of healed wounds. "What are these from?" "The first escape attempt. I tried to pick the lock on my window. The metal cut deep." "And these?" His thumb traced newer marks, barely healed. "The fourth attempt. And the fifth." "Clara, I told you I fought." Her voice was steady despite the tears. "Every scar is proof that I never stopped trying to get back to you." Something broke inside him. 4 years of anger, of grief, of carefully maintained walls, all of it crumbling at the touch of her hand and the truth in her eyes. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to trust you again." "Then don't. Not yet." She didn't pull away, didn't push for more than he could give. "Let me earn it. Day by day, hour by hour. Let me prove that I'm still the woman you married." "You're not. She's gone." Pain flashed across Clara's face. "You're not her," Eli continued. "And I'm not the man you left behind. We're both different now. Harder. More broken." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we can figure out who we are now. Together." Hope flickered in her eyes, fragile as a candle flame. "Is that a yes?" "That's a maybe. A small maybe." "I'll take it." The next 3 days passed in a blur of hard work and harder conversations. Clara threw herself into ranch life with a determination that bordered on obsessive. She was up before dawn, helping with the morning feeding. She worked alongside Eli all day, never complaining, even when her body clearly screamed for rest. She fell into bed each night exhausted, but somehow more alive than she'd been in years. Sammy attached himself to her like a shadow, asking endless questions about her life, her favorite color, whether she'd missed him, what stories she knew if she could really shoot a rifle like Papa said she used to. "I could once," Clara admitted. "I might be rusty now." "Papa can teach you again. He taught me to whittle." "Did he?" "I'm not very good yet. But Papa says practice makes progress." Clara smiled at the familiar phrase. "He used to say that to me, too." "Maybe you can practice together. Like a family." The word hung in the air, weighted with possibility. Eli watched their growing bond with a mixture of joy and terror. Every laugh they shared, every moment of connection, every step Clara took toward reclaiming her place in Sammy's heart, each one made it harder for him to imagine sending her away. But the week wasn't over yet, and he still didn't fully trust her. On the fourth evening, they received a visitor. Old Zeke Pruitt rode up to the ranch, just as the sun was setting, his face grave beneath his battered hat. "We need to talk, Eli. Alone." Something in his tone made Clara's blood run cold. "Sammy, go inside and start on your letters," Eli ordered. "But Papa." "Now, son." The boy obeyed reluctantly, casting worried looks over his shoulder as he went. "Clara, you should hear this too," Zeke said. "It concerns you more than anyone." The three of them stood in the dying light, breath misting in the cold air. "Got word from the telegraph office in Laramie," Zeke began. "Friend of mine runs it. Owes me a favor or two." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. "3 men arrived on the noon train yesterday, asking questions about a woman matching your description, ma'am, calling her mentally unstable, saying they're authorized to bring her back to her family." Clara's face went white. "How long until they reach Bitter Creek?" "Tomorrow. Maybe the day after, depending on the weather." Eli's hand moved instinctively to the rifle slung across his back. "She's not going with them." "Eli," Clara started. "I said no." His voice was steel. "I don't care who they are or what papers they carry. You're not leaving with anyone unless you choose to. They'll have the law on their side. My father's lawyers can make documents say anything he wants. Then we'll fight the law. You could lose everything, the ranch, Sammy, your freedom. You let me worry about what I'm willing to lose." Zeke cleared his throat. "There might be another way. I've got some friends in Cheyenne. Good men. Connected men. If we can get the real story out, get it documented proper, maybe we can fight fire with fire." "What kind of friends?" "The kind that don't much care for rich men from back east, thinking they can buy justice." Zeke's eyes glinted. "Wyoming Territory's about to become a state. Lots of people invested in making sure it starts off right. Clean, fair, not beholden to railroad money and industrial tycoons. Can you get them here in time?" "I can try. But Eli, you need to be prepared. If those men arrive before help does, then I'll handle it." Clara grabbed his arm. "No. No, I won't let you risk yourself for me. If they come, I'll go with them. I'll figure out another way to escape." "You're not going anywhere. Eli, please." 4 years. His voice cracked. 4 years I spent believing you chose to leave me. 4 years I spent hating you, mourning you, trying to forget you. I'm not losing you again. Not to your father. Not to anyone. Clara's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're staying. I'm saying we fight this together. I'm saying—" He stopped, struggling with words that had been locked inside him for far too long. "I'm saying I still love you, Clara. God help me, I never stopped, even when I wanted to, even when I tried." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You don't have to say that just because—" "I'm not saying it because of anything. I'm saying it because it's true." He took her face in his hands, rough palms gentle against her skin. "I love you. I've loved you since the moment I saw you in your father's office pretending you weren't watching me. And I'll love you until the day I die, whether that's tomorrow or 50 years from now." "Eli." "Let me finish. I don't know what's coming. I don't know if we can beat your father and his lawyers and his hired guns. But I know that whatever happens, I want to face it with you. Not as strangers, not as enemies, as partners, as family." Clara was crying openly now, but her smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "Is this really happening?" "Unless you say no." "I could never say no to you." She leaned into his touch, her forehead pressing against his. "I love you too. I've always loved you. Even when they told me you were lost. Even when I thought I'd never see you again. You were my reason for surviving." Zeke cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm, gonna go send that telegram now. Give you two some privacy. Neither of them noticed him leave. Eli kissed her then for the first time in 4 years. Soft at first, tentative, both of them afraid of shattering something fragile and new. Then, deeper, more urgent, making up for lost time with every breath. When they finally pulled apart, they were both trembling. "Whatever comes," Clara whispered, "we face it together." "Together," Eli agreed. From the window of the cabin, a small face watched with wonder. Sammy didn't understand everything he'd seen or heard, but he understood enough. His mama was home, his papa was happy, and no one was going to take that away from them, not ever. The kiss still burned on Clara's lips when Eli pulled away, his eyes dark with a mixture of fear and determination she hadn't seen since the night they'd first run away together. "We need to prepare," he said, his voice rough. "If those men are coming tomorrow, we don't have much time." "What kind of preparation?" "The kind that makes them think twice about trying anything." He took her hand and led her back toward the cabin, where Sammy still watched from the window. The boy's face lit up when he saw them approaching together, their fingers intertwined. "Papa, Mama, are you coming inside now?" "In a minute, son." Eli stopped at the door, turning to face Clara. "I need you to understand something. What happens next might get ugly. Those men won't care about the truth. They'll have papers, authority, maybe even guns. Are you sure you want to stand and fight? I've been running for 6 months. Before that, I was trapped for 4 years. Clara's jaw set with the same stubborn determination he remembered from their early days. "I'm done running. I'm done being trapped. Whatever comes, I face it here, with you and Sammy. Even if it means losing, even then, at least I'll lose on my own terms." Eli nodded slowly. "All right. Then let's make sure we don't lose." They spent the evening planning. Eli showed Clara where he kept his rifles, made her practice loading and unloading until her bandaged hands moved with something approaching confidence. He explained the layout of the property, the places where attackers might approach the defensive positions that would give them the best advantage. "You really think it'll come to shooting?" Clara asked. "I hope not, but your father's men might not give us a choice." Sammy had been put to bed hours ago, but neither adult could sleep. They sat at the kitchen table, a single lamp casting shadows across their faces, speaking in low voices about possibilities and contingencies. "There's something I need to tell you," Clara said finally. "Something I should have said before." Eli tensed. "What?" "When I escaped from the wedding, I didn't just run. I took something." She reached into the pocket of her borrowed coat and pulled out a folded envelope, yellowed with age and worn at the edges. "I found this in my father's desk while I was looking for money. He'd kept it all these years. I don't know why. Maybe as a trophy. Maybe to remind himself of what he'd destroyed." She handed it to Eli with trembling fingers. He unfolded the paper carefully, his eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. His own handwriting. "This is the letter I wrote to you," he said slowly. "After you. After I thought you left. I sent it to your father's house, hoping somehow it would reach you. I never saw it. Not until 3 days ago." Eli read the words he'd written 4 years earlier, words stained with desperation and heartbreak. "Clara, I don't understand what happened. I don't understand why you left or what I did wrong. But I need you to know that I love you. I will always love you. Whatever your father told you, whatever he threatened you with, please know that there is nothing you could do that would make me stop. Sammy is healthy. He asks for you every night. He doesn't understand why Mama went away, and I don't know how to explain it to him because I don't understand either. If you ever want to come home, the door will always be open. If you ever need help, I will move heaven and earth to reach you. You are my wife, my heart, my everything. That will never change. Please, Clara, just let me know you're safe. Just give me some sign that you're out there, that you haven't forgotten us completely. I love you. Always." Eli. His hands shook as he finished reading. "You wrote this," Clara whispered. "You tried to reach me." I wrote 100 letters. More. I don't know how many. I sent them everywhere I could think of. His voice cracked. I never got a single response. I thought you just didn't care enough to answer. He intercepted everything. Every letter, every telegram, every attempt you made. Tears streamed down Clara's face. All those years I thought you'd given up on me, and you thought I'd abandoned you. He made sure we'd never find our way back to each other. But we did. Eli reached across the table and took her hand. Against everything he tried, we found each other anyway. Because I ran. Because I refused to stop fighting. She squeezed his fingers. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew you were still out there waiting. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of lost years pressing down on them. I'm going to destroy him, Eli said quietly. Not just beat him. Destroy him. Everything he has, everything he's built. I'm going to tear it all down. Eli. He stole 4 years from us. 4 years of watching Sammy grow. 4 years of building our life together. 4 years of... His voice broke. He told you our son was dead. He let you grieve for a child who was alive and asking for you every single night. That's not something I can forgive. That's not something I can let stand. Revenge won't give us those years back. No. But it might make sure he never does this to anyone else. Before Clara could respond, a sound cut through the night. Hoofbeats approaching fast. Eli was on his feet in an instant, rifle in hand. Stay here. Keep the door locked. Eli, wait. But he was already gone, slipping out into the darkness. Clara stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed the second rifle from above the fireplace. Her hands shook as she checked the chamber, but she forced herself to breathe, to remember Eli's instructions. The hoofbeats stopped. Voices low and urgent drifted through the thin walls. Then Eli's voice, sharp with relief. Zeke, what the hell are you doing here at this hour? Couldn't wait until morning. The old man's voice was breathless. News from Cheyenne. Better than I hoped. Clara opened the door to find Eli and Zeke standing in the moonlight, their breath forming clouds in the frozen air. What news? Zeke grinned, his weathered face transformed. Got a reply from my friends. They're very interested in the story of Cornelius Thornton and his imprisoned daughter. Turns out he's got enemies, powerful ones, men who've been looking for leverage against him for years. What kind of enemies? The kind that sit in territorial government, the kind that will be writing the laws when Wyoming becomes a state in a few months. Zeke pulled out a crumpled telegram. They're sending someone. A lawyer named Harrison Blake. Used to be a federal prosecutor before he moved west. He'll be here day after tomorrow with documents that could turn this whole thing around. Day after tomorrow. Clara's heart sank. But those men will be here tomorrow. I know. That's why I rode through the night. Zeke's expression sobered. You need to hold them off for 1 day. Just 1 day. If you can do that, help will come. Eli's jaw tightened. 1 day. Can you do it? He looked at Clara, then back at Zeke. We don't have a choice. The night passed in fitful attempts at rest. Clara dozed on the sofa, while Eli kept watch. Then they switched positions as dawn approached. Neither of them really slept. Sammy woke with the sun oblivious to the tension crackling through the cabin. Is today a working day, Papa? Not exactly. Eli crouched down to his son's level. Sammy, I need you to listen carefully. Some men might come to the ranch today. Bad men. The boy's eyes went wide. Like the wolf that came to the henhouse. Something like that. I need you to stay inside with Mama. No matter what you hear outside, no matter what happens, you stay with her and you don't come out until I say it's safe. Can you do that? Are you going to shoot them? I hope I won't have to. But if you do... Eli's throat tightened. Then I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and Mama safe. That's my job. Your job is to be brave and do what I say. Deal? Sammy nodded solemnly. Deal. They ate breakfast in near silence. Clara kept glancing toward the window, watching the road that led from town. Eli checked and rechecked his rifles, his movements methodical and precise. The waiting was the worst part. Hours dragged by with no sign of approach. Every distant sound made them jump. Every shift in the wind felt like a warning. It was mid-afternoon when Sammy spotted them first. "Papa, riders!" Eli moved to the window. 3 men on horseback moving slowly but deliberately toward the ranch. They wore city clothes that looked wrong against the snow-covered landscape, and even from a distance, Eli could see the glint of metal at their hips. "Get in the back room," he told Clara. "Take Sammy, lock the door. I'm not hiding while you face them alone." "Clara." "No." She grabbed his arm, her eyes fierce. "We said together, I meant it. You're in no condition to. I survived 4 years in hell. I can survive this." She picked up the second rifle. "Besides, if they see me, they'll know I'm not hiding. They'll know I'm not afraid." "Are you afraid?" "Terrified." She smiled grimly. "But I'm done letting fear make my choices." Eli stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Sammy, go to your room. Lock the door. Don't come out." "But Mama said—" "I'll be fine, sweetheart." Clara knelt and kissed his forehead. "Go. Be brave for me." The boy went casting worried looks over his shoulder until his door closed. Eli and Clara stepped out onto the porch together, rifles held low but ready. The riders were close enough now to see their faces. The leader was tall and narrow, with the cold eyes of a man who'd done ugly things and slept well afterward. The other two were broader, harder, the kind of muscle you hired when you expected trouble. "Mrs. Crane," the leader's voice carried across the snow, "we're here to escort you home." "My name is Clara Mercer," she called back, "and I am home." The man's expression didn't change. "Your husband is very worried about you. Your father, too. They just want you to get the help you need." "Aldridge Harwick is not my husband. The ceremony was performed under duress, and my father can rot in hell." "Ma'am, I understand you're confused. The doctors warned us this might happen. But if you'll just come with us peacefully." She said no. Eli's voice cut like a blade. "I suggest you listen." The leader's eyes shifted to Eli, assessing. "This doesn't concern you, sir." "The hell it doesn't. That's my wife you're trying to take." "According to the legal documents I'm carrying, she's the wife of Aldridge Harwick and has been declared mentally incompetent by qualified physicians." The man patted his coat pocket. "I have full authority to return her to her family's care." "I don't care what papers you have. She's not going anywhere." The 2 men behind the leader shifted hands, moving toward their guns. Eli's rifle came up smoothly, not pointing at anyone yet, but ready. "I wouldn't," he said quietly. "I've been shooting since I was 5 years old. By the time your boys clear leather, I'll have put bullets in all 3 of you. You'd kill 3 men over a woman. I'd die for her. Killing's easier." The standoff stretched tension thick enough to taste. "We don't want trouble," the leader said finally. "We're just doing our job." "Then your job just got a lot harder." Clara stepped forward, her rifle steady despite her shaking hands. "I'm not the confused little woman your employers described. I'm not insane. I'm not incompetent. I'm a mother who was stolen from her child, a wife who was torn from her husband, and I have spent the last 4 years fighting to get back to them." She pulled something from her pocket, the letter Eli had written, now unfolded and visible. "This is proof that my husband never abandoned me, that he searched for me, that he loved me through everything." Her voice rose. "I have more proof. Letters my father intercepted, records from the asylum showing I was held without legal commitment papers, testimony from staff who were paid to keep me drugged and silent." The leader's expression flickered the first crack in his professional composure. "In 2 days, a lawyer from Cheyenne will arrive with enough evidence to destroy Cornelius Thornton, your employer, the man paying your salary." Clara stepped closer still, So here's your choice. You can try to take me by force and face murder charges when the territorial authorities arrive. Or you can ride back to wherever you came from and tell my father that his daughter is done being his prisoner." Silence fell. The leader looked at his men, then back at Clara and Eli. "We'll be back," he said finally. "With more men, with the sheriff, with legal force." "You do that." Eli's rifle didn't waver. "And when you come back, you'll find the same answer. She stays. We fight. And your employer learns that some things can't be bought." The men turned their horses and rode away, moving faster than they'd come. Clara's knees buckled the moment they disappeared from sight. Eli caught her, holding her against his chest as tremors racked her body. "You were amazing," he murmured into her hair. "God, Clara, you were incredible. I was terrified. I thought I might vomit. But you didn't. You stood your ground. You made them back down." "They'll be back," you heard him. "Then we'll be ready." Sammy's door burst open and the boy came running, throwing himself at both of them. "Are they gone? Did you win?" "We won the first round," Eli said, scooping him up. "But the fight's not over yet." "When will it be over?" Clara touched her son's cheek, marveling at the miracle of him. "Soon, sweetheart. Soon we'll be safe, and we can just be a family. Promise." She looked at Eli, saw the same determination in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. "I promise. Whatever it takes, I promise." That night the storm hit. It came without warning, a wall of white that swallowed the world whole. Wind howled around the cabin, shaking the walls, driving snow through every crack and crevice. Eli worked frantically to secure the animals, coming back frostbitten and exhausted. Clara kept the fire burning, kept Sammy calm, kept herself from falling apart. And then, just before midnight, Sammy started coughing. At first it seemed like nothing. A tickle in his throat, a bit of congestion from the cold. But as the hours passed, the cough grew deeper, wetter, more frightening. By dawn, he was burning with fever. "No." Clara pressed her hand to his forehead, feeling the heat radiating off him. "No, no, no." "How bad?" Eli's face was gray with exhaustion and fear. "Bad. We need a doctor." "There's no getting to town in this storm. We'd die before we made it halfway." "Then what do we do?" Eli closed his eyes, searching his memory for everything he'd learned about childhood illness in 5 years of raising Sammy alone. Cool cloths for the fever, honey water to keep him hydrated, steam to help him breathe. He opened his eyes. And pray. The next 12 hours were a waking nightmare. Sammy drifted in and out of consciousness, his small body racked with chills and coughing fits. Clara held him through it all, singing songs she hadn't sung in 4 years, whispering promises she desperately hoped she could keep. "Mama." His voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, am I dying?" "No, baby. No, you're not dying. You're going to be fine. I heard Papa say people die from fever sometimes." "Not you. Never you." She pulled him closer, her tears falling into his hair. "I lost you once. I won't lose you again. Do you hear me? I won't let it happen. You came back. I did. I knew you would." His eyes fluttered closed. "I dreamed about you. Every night. I dreamed you'd come home." Clara's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I'm here now. I'm not leaving. Promise. I promise, sweetheart. I promise on my life." She stayed by his bed through the night, through the storm, through hours that felt like years. Eli brought water and cloths and honey tea, but mostly he just sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his presence a silent anchor. Sometime after midnight, the fever peaked. Sammy's body convulsed, his temperature spiking so high that Clara screamed for Eli to do something, anything. They stripped off his nightshirt and wrapped him in wet cloths, forcing cool water past his cracked lips, praying to a God neither of them was sure was listening. And then, as the first gray light of dawn crept through the window, the fever broke. Sammy's breathing eased. His temperature dropped. The color began returning to his cheeks. He opened his eyes. "Mama, why are you crying?" Clara couldn't answer. Could only hold him, rock him, thank God and fate, and whatever forces had kept him safe. "You're okay," she finally managed. "You're going to be okay." "My throat hurts." "I know, baby, but you're going to be fine." Eli knelt beside them, his eyes red-rimmed. "You scared us, son." "Sorry, Papa." "Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again." The three of them sat tangled together as the sun rose, as the storm finally began to fade, as the nightmare slowly released its grip. "I love you," Sammy said sleepily. "Both of you. I love you so much." Clara and Eli looked at each other over their son's head. "We love you too," Clara whispered. "More than anything," Eli added. And for the first time since she'd fallen off that train, Clara truly believed they were going to make it. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family. Sammy slept through most of the following day, his small body recovering from the fever that had nearly claimed him. Clara refused to leave his side, dozing in the chair beside his bed, waking at every cough or movement. Eli kept watch by the window rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the road. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried under fresh snow. Beautiful if you had the heart to appreciate it. Eli didn't. All he could think about was the promise those men had made. "We'll be back." "You should rest," Clara said softly, appearing at his shoulder. "Can't." "Eli, you've been awake for 2 days." "And I'll stay awake until I know we're safe." He didn't take his eyes from the window. "How's Sammy?" "Better. His fever's gone. He's asking for food." "That's good. That's real good." Clara's hand settled on his shoulder, warm through his shirt. "Harrison Blake should be here today. Zeke said day after tomorrow, and that was yesterday." If the storm didn't delay him. It didn't delay those men. Eli finally looked at her, seeing the fear she was trying to hide behind a brave face. "They won't touch you. I swear to God, Clara, they won't lay a finger on you." "I'm not worried about me." "Then what?" "I'm worried about what happens if you have to kill someone to protect us." Her voice dropped. "I'm worried about what that would do to you, to Sammy, to our chance at a normal life." "There's no normal life if you're not in it." "Eli, I mean it." He stood, setting the rifle aside, and took her face in his hands. 4 years ago, I let them take you because I thought I had no choice. Because I thought fighting back would get me killed and leave Sammy alone. I was wrong. I should have fought. Should have died trying if that's what it took. You would have died, and Sammy would have grown up with no parents at all. Maybe, but at least he wouldn't have grown up with a father who surrendered. Eli's jaw tightened. "I won't make that mistake again. Whatever happens today, I fight. And if I go down swinging." Before Clara could respond, Sammy's voice drifted from the bedroom. "Mama, Papa, I'm hungry." Clara managed a smile. "Coming, sweetheart." She went to tend to their son, and Eli returned to his vigil by the window. An hour later they came. Not 3 men this time. 6. And behind them a carriage that looked wildly out of place against the snow-covered landscape. Clara. Eli's voice was steady, but his hand had already found the rifle. "Get Sammy into the back room. Now." She didn't argue, just gathered their son and disappeared into the small storage room at the rear of the cabin where the walls were thick and a locked door might buy precious minutes if everything went wrong. Eli stepped onto the porch rifle, held openly, not threatening, but not hiding either. The rider stopped at the edge of his property. The carriage door opened, and Cornelius Thornton stepped out. He looked older than Eli remembered, grayer, more stooped. But his eyes held the same cold calculation, the same absolute certainty that money and power could buy anything. "Mr. Mercer." His voice carried across the snow. "I believe we have business to discuss." "We have nothing to discuss. Get off my land." "I'm afraid I can't do that." Thornton moved closer, flanked by two of his hired men. "You have something that belongs to me. Your daughter isn't property. She's mentally ill, legally incompetent, in need of care that you cannot provide. She's the sanest person I've ever known. And the bravest." Thornton's lip curled. "You've been deceived, Mr. Mercer. Clara has always been skilled at manipulating men. It's a symptom of her condition." "Her condition?" Eli's voice dripped contempt. "You mean the condition you invented to control her? The condition you used to lock her away for 4 years? I did what was necessary to protect my daughter from her own poor judgment, running off with a penniless rancher, living in squalor, producing a child out of wedlock. We were married. A ceremony performed by some backwoods preacher with no legal standing. I had it annulled before the ink was dry. That's not how the law works. I decide how the law works." Thornton's patience was clearly thinning. "I have lawyers, judges, politicians in my pocket. I could crush this entire territory if I chose to. One man with a rifle is nothing to me." "Then why are you here yourself?" The question stopped Thornton mid-stride. "You could have sent more hired guns," Eli continued. "Could have brought an army. Instead, you came in person. Why?" Something flickered in the old man's eyes. Something that might have been uncertainty. "Because I wanted to see for myself. The man who bewitched my daughter. The man who turned her against her own family. I didn't turn her against anyone. She made her own choices. She was a child. She didn't know what she wanted. She was 23 years old, and she wanted to be loved, respected, treated like a person instead of a possession." Eli's grip tightened on his rifle. "I gave her that. You tried to take it away. That's the only difference between us." Thornton's face reddened with anger. "You know nothing about what I've done for her. The sacrifices I made. The plans I had. Plans that had nothing to do with her happiness. Plans that were about your money, your power, your legacy." Eli stepped forward, his voice rising. "You didn't lose a daughter 4 years ago. You lost a bargaining chip. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You needed her for some business deal, some merger, and when she ran, you had to get her back. That's Aldridge Harwick." The name landed like a blow. "Your business partner, the man you sold her to in exchange for what railroad shares mining rights." Thornton's silence was answer enough. "She told me about him, about the wedding, about how she was drugged and dragged to the altar while your men held her down." Eli's voice shook with fury. "You did that to your own daughter, your own flesh and blood. It was for her own good. It was for your good. It's always been about you." The front door of the cabin opened. Both men turned. Clara stood on the porch, pale but steady, her chin lifted in defiance. "Clara, get back inside." "No." She walked forward until she stood beside Eli close enough to touch. "I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid." Thornton's eyes narrowed. "Clara, darling, you're not well. Let me help you. Help me." Her laugh was bitter. "You locked me in an asylum for 4 years. You told me my son was dead. You forced me to marry a man I'd never met." She stepped closer to her father, her voice rising. "That's not help. That's torture. Everything I did was to protect you from what? From a man who loved me. From a life I chose. From the happiness I found without your permission. From your own foolishness." Thornton's composure finally cracked. "You threw away everything. Your position, your future, your family name for what? A dirt farmer, a shack in the middle of nowhere. For love. Something you've never understood. Love." He spat the word like a curse. "Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't build empires. Love doesn't. Love doesn't imprison people. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't destroy. Clara's voice broke, but she kept going. Mama loved you and you worked her to death. I loved you and you locked me away. Is there anyone in your life you haven't ruined? The question hung in the frozen air. Thornton's face went through a series of expressions, anger, denial, and for just a moment, something that might have been pain. Your mother understood duty. She understood sacrifice. My mother died trying to give you more sons because you couldn't accept that a daughter was enough. That's not 3 miscarriages, 3. And you kept pushing her, kept demanding until her body simply gave out. Tears streamed down Clara's face, but her voice never wavered. I was 12 years old when I watched her die. And do you know what her last words were? Thornton said nothing. She said, take care of your father. He doesn't know how to love, but he needs it anyway. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. I tried. God help me, I tried for years. But you can't love someone who only sees you as a means to an end. The silence that followed was deafening. Then from the road, the sound of approaching horses. Everyone turned. A group of riders was coming fast, maybe a dozen of them led by a man in a black coat with a leather satchel across his shoulder. That'll be Harrison Blake, Eli said quietly, the lawyer from Cheyenne. Thornton's hired men shifted nervously. Their employer's face had gone pale. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. Clara's voice was steady now. Whatever power you have back east, it doesn't reach here. Wyoming territory isn't your kingdom. These people aren't your subjects, and I am not your property. The riders arrived in a flurry of snow and stamping hooves. Harrison Blake dismounted first, a tall man in his 40s with sharp eyes, and the bearing of someone who'd spent years fighting battles in courtrooms. Cornelius Thornton. His voice carried authority. I have a warrant for your arrest. On what charges? False imprisonment, fraud, conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Blake pulled a sheaf of papers from his satchel. And as of this morning, a dozen counts of witness tampering. Seems some of your employees at Greenfield Sanitarium had a sudden attack of conscience. Thornton's face went gray. Those charges will never hold up in court. Maybe, maybe not. But they'll hold up long enough for a full investigation. Long enough for all your victims to tell their stories. Long enough for the newspapers to hear about the wealthy industrialist who locked up his own daughter. Blake smiled coldly. By the time we're done, you won't be able to buy a cup of coffee in Philadelphia, let alone a judge. I'll have your license. I'll destroy you. Men more powerful than you have tried. Blake turned to his deputies. Take him into custody. The rest of these men too pending questioning. What happened next was almost anticlimactic. Thornton's hired guns, seeing themselves suddenly outnumbered and facing legitimate authority, surrendered without resistance. Thornton himself stood frozen for a long moment, his eyes fixed on Clara. You've destroyed everything I built. No, Father. Her voice was quiet. You did that yourself. I'm just finally free of the wreckage. They led him away. Clara watched until the carriage disappeared down the road, until the last rider faded into the distance. Then her knees buckled. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. I've got you. Is it really over? The hardest part is, the rest is just paperwork. She laughed a broken sound that turned into sobs. Paperwork. 4 years of hell, and it ends with paperwork. Would you prefer a shootout? Maybe a small one, for dramatic effect. Eli held her close, feeling her shake in his arms. You were amazing, standing up to him like that. I was terrified. That's what makes it amazing. He pulled back enough to see her face. I'm proud of you. I don't think I've ever been more proud of anyone. Papa, Mama. They turned to see Sammy running toward them, his face pale but determined. The mean men are gone. They're gone, sweetheart. Clara opened her arms and he threw himself into them. They're gone, and they're never coming back. Promise. I promise. The three of them stood in the snow holding each other as the weak winter sun broke through the clouds. Harrison Blake approached, his expression softening at the sight of the reunited family. Mrs. Mercer, I need to take a formal statement at some point, but it can wait until you've had a chance to recover. Thank you. There's one more thing. He pulled an envelope from his coat. This was among the documents we seized from your father's Philadelphia office. I thought you might want it. Clara took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a stack of letters, each one in Eli's handwriting. He kept them all, she whispered. Every letter you ever wrote me. Over 100 by my count. Blake's voice was gentle. He intercepted every single one. Clara looked at Eli, tears streaming down her face. You never stopped trying to reach me. Never. Not once. She clutched the letters to her chest. 100 attempts to breach the walls her father had built. 100 declarations of love that had never reached their destination, until now. I need to read these, she said. You'll have all the time in the world. Eli kissed her forehead. We both will. That evening, after Blake and his deputies had gone, after Sammy had been put to bed, after the cabin had finally grown quiet, Clara sat at the kitchen table with the stack of letters before her. Eli sat across from her watching her read. She started with the oldest one, dated just days after she'd been taken. His handwriting was frantic, desperate, the words smudged in places where he'd clearly been writing through tears. Clara, please come home. I don't understand what happened. I don't know how to make this right. Just tell me what you need and I'll do it. Anything. Everything. She read through letter after letter, watched his desperation slowly transform into grief, then anger, then a numb acceptance that broke her heart all over again. The last letter was dated 2 years ago. The handwriting was steadier, now resigned. Clara, I don't know why I keep writing these. You've made it clear you don't want to hear from me. But I can't seem to stop. Sammy turned 3 yesterday. He asked about you. He always asks about you. I don't know what to tell him anymore. The truth seems too cruel, but the lies taste like poison. I still love you. I probably always will. But I'm starting to accept that loving you means letting you go, means building a life without you, even though every day feels like walking through fog. If you ever read this, if some miracle brings these words to you after all this time, know that there was never anyone else. There never could be. You were my heart. You still are. Goodbye, Clara. Be happy wherever you are. Always yours. Eli. Clara set the letter down, tears falling freely. You were saying goodbye. I thought I had to. His voice was rough. Thought holding on was just hurting both of us. But you kept writing. One more, and then one more after that. I couldn't seem to make myself stop completely. She reached across the table and took his hand. I'm sorry you went through that alone. I'm sorry you went through worse. We're here now, that's what matters. Yeah. He squeezed her fingers. We're here now. Later, after the fire had burned low and the cabin had grown cold, they lay together in Eli's bed for the first time in 4 years. Not making love, neither of them had the energy for that, but simply holding each other, relearning the shape of each other's bodies. What happens now? Clara whispered into the darkness. Now we heal. We rebuild. We figure out who we are after everything that's happened. Together. Together. She pressed closer to him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. I love you, Eli Mercer. I love you too, Clara Mercer. He kissed the top of her head. Always have. Always will. Outside, the wind had died down, and the clouds had cleared. Stars blazed across the Wyoming sky, cold and bright and eternal. And in a small cabin on the edge of nowhere, a family that had been shattered was slowly becoming whole again. The weeks following Cornelius Thornton's arrest passed in a blur of legal proceedings, healing, and the slow work of rebuilding a life. Harrison Blake proved to be worth every ounce of faith Zeke had placed in him. He navigated the territorial courts with precision filing motions that stripped away every legal chain Thornton had wrapped around Clara. The forced marriage to Aldridge Harwick was annulled within days. The commitment papers to Greenfield Sanitarium were declared fraudulent and destroyed, and Clara May Thornton was officially, legally, irrevocably free. "There's one more thing," Blake said during his final visit to the ranch. "The matter of your father's estate." Clara looked up from where she sat beside Eli on the porch. "I don't want his money." "I understand, but the courts have ruled that you're entitled to compensation for wrongful imprisonment. 4 years at the standard rate, plus damages for emotional suffering." Blake consulted his papers. "The total comes to roughly $60,000. Eli nearly choked on his coffee. $60,000? Conservative estimate. Could be more if we push for it. Clara was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to Eli. "What do you think?" "I think it's your decision. Your suffering. Your money. Our suffering. Our future." She looked back at Blake. "We'll take it, but not for ourselves." "Then for what?" "For the other women, the ones still locked up in places like Greenfield. The ones whose fathers and husbands decided they were inconvenient." Clara's voice hardened with purpose. "Use half the money to fund investigations into private asylums across the territory. Use the other half to help the women who get out start new lives." Blake's eyebrows rose. "That's remarkably generous. It's remarkably necessary." She glanced at Eli again, and he nodded. "My father built his fortune by controlling people. I want to use it to set them free." After Blake left, Eli pulled Clara into his arms. "You're something else, you know that. Is that a compliment? The highest one I know how to give." She smiled against his chest. "I couldn't keep that money. Every dollar would remind me of what he did." "I know. That's part of what makes you remarkable." Sammy came running around the corner of the cabin, his cheeks flushed from the cold. "Mama, Papa, look what I found." He held up a bird's nest, abandoned but perfectly preserved. "The babies flew away," he said solemnly. "But they left their home behind." Clara knelt down to examine the nest, running her fingers over the carefully woven twigs. "Sometimes that happens, sweetheart. Sometimes you have to leave home to find where you really belong." "But they came back, right? The birds come back every spring?" "They do. They always come back." Sammy considered this. "Like you came back to us." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Exactly like that." Spring arrived early that year, melting the snow and bringing new life to the frozen landscape. The cattle survived the winter with minimal losses. The vegetable garden Eli and Sammy had started showed its first green shoots, and Clara, who had spent 4 years in white-walled prisons, spent hours every day outside drinking in the sun and the wind and the endless open sky. "You're staring again," Eli said one morning, finding her on the porch at dawn. "I can't help it. I forgot how beautiful it was here. It's just dirt and grass and sky. It's freedom." She turned to face him. "Every morning I wake up and I can't believe I get to be here. That I get to walk outside without permission. That I get to hold my son. That I get to love you." He moved closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You get to do all of it, for the rest of your life. Promise?" "I promise." They stood together watching the sunrise, and Eli realized that the weight he'd carried for 4 years had finally lifted. The anger was gone. The grief was fading. In their place was something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The wedding was Widow Calloway's idea. "You two have been living under the same roof for 3 months," she said firmly, standing in the middle of the cabin with her hands on her hips. "It's time to make it official." "We were married once already," Clara pointed out. "That ceremony was annulled. By the law, you're as unmarried as the day you were born. Does it really matter? It matters to this community. It matters to Sammy. And whether you admit it or not, it matters to you." Clara looked at Eli, who shrugged. "She's not wrong. You want to get married again? I want to marry you every day for the rest of my life. Might as well start with a ceremony." So they planned a wedding. It would be small, they agreed, simple, just family and close friends at the little church on the edge of town. Nothing like the elaborate disaster Clara had escaped in Chicago. But word spread, as word always does in small communities. By the time the day arrived, half of Bitter Creek had invited themselves to witness the union of the rancher and the woman who'd fought her way back from hell. Clara stood in the small room behind the church, studying her reflection in a cracked mirror. Widow Calloway had altered one of her late daughter's dresses to fit a simple cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. It was perfect. "You look beautiful, Mama." She turned to find Sammy in the doorway, dressed in his best clothes, his hair actually combed for once. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look very handsome. Papa told me to come get you. He says he's tired of waiting." Clara laughed. "Is he now?" "He's been pacing back and forth for an hour. Mr. Pruitt says he's going to wear a hole in the floor." "Then we'd better not keep him waiting any longer." She took Sammy's hand, and together they walked out of the small room, down the narrow hallway, and into the church. The pews were packed. It seemed like everyone from 50 miles around had come to witness this moment. Clara saw faces she recognized. Zeke Pruitt, Mrs. Patterson from the general store, the ranch hands who'd helped during calving season, and many she didn't. But she only had eyes for one face. Eli stood at the altar, and when he saw her, everything else faded away. The people, the music, the flowers someone had gathered from the spring meadows. None of it existed anymore. Just him. Just her. Just the love that had survived everything her father had thrown at it. Sammy walked her down the aisle, his small hand gripping hers with fierce pride. When they reached the altar, he placed Clara's hand in Eli's and stepped back to stand with Widow Calloway. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the preacher asked. "I do," Sammy said loudly. "And Papa does too. We both give her because we both love her." Laughter rippled through the church. The preacher smiled. "Then let us proceed." The ceremony was brief and beautiful. Traditional vows spoken with voices that trembled. Rings exchanged, simple bands that Eli had forged himself in the blacksmith shop in town. "Do you, Elijah Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Eli's voice was rough with emotion. "Now and forever. I do." "And do you, Clara May Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Clara's tears fell freely, but she was smiling. "With all my heart, I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife." The preacher grinned. "You may kiss your bride." Eli pulled her close and kissed her deep and long, while the church erupted in cheers. When they finally broke apart, Sammy was tugging at both their hands. "Does this mean we're really a family now, official and everything?" "Official and everything." Eli confirmed. "Can I call you Papa and Mama in front of other people now, not just at home?" "You can call us whatever you want, sweetheart." Clara scooped him up, holding him between them. "We're your parents. Nothing will ever change that. Not even bad men. Especially not bad men." The reception was held in the town square, where tables had been set up and food had been laid out in the generous communal way of frontier communities. People ate and danced and celebrated until the sun began to set. Clara found herself sitting on a bench at the edge of the festivities, watching Eli teach Sammy to square dance, while old Zeke called out instructions on his fiddle. You did it. She turned to find Widow Calloway beside her holding 2 cups of punch. Did what? Found your way home. The older woman handed her one of the cups. I've seen a lot of women come through this territory. Most of them broken by one thing or another. Husband's death, childbirth gone wrong, shattered dreams and harder reality than they bargained for. I was broken too. Maybe, but you put yourself back together. That's the difference. Widow Calloway's eyes were soft. My daughter didn't manage it. She let the prairie beat her down until there was nothing left. Watching you wear her dress today. She paused, composing herself. It felt like she was finally at peace. Clara reached out and took the older woman's hand. Thank you. For everything. The dress, the room when I first arrived, the support through all of it. That's what community's for. We take care of our own. I wasn't your own. I was a stranger in a torn wedding dress. You were a woman in need. That made you ours. Widow Calloway squeezed her hand and stood. Now go dance with your husband. You've earned a little happiness. Clara joined Eli and Sammy on the makeshift dance floor, and they spun together in the fading light. Sammy's laughter echoed across the square, and for the first time in 5 years, Clara felt completely, perfectly at peace. Later that night, after the celebration had ended, and Sammy had been put to bed at Widow Calloway's for the night, Eli and Clara walked hand in hand back to the ranch. The moon was full, casting silver light across the snow-dusted landscape. The air was cold, but clean, filled with the promise of spring. Happy? Eli asked. More than I thought possible. Clara leaned into him as they walked. More than I thought I deserved. You deserve everything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it. I already have everything. You, Sammy, this life we're building together. She stopped walking and turned to face him. I spent 4 years dreaming about this. About coming home. About finding you and our son. About having a second chance. And now you have it. And now I have it. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the lines that 4 years of grief had carved there. I'm going to make it count. Every single day. I'm going to make sure neither of us ever forgets how precious this is. He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. I could never forget. Even during the years I tried to hate you, I couldn't forget what we had, what we were. What are we now? Better. He pulled her close. We're better now. Stronger. More grateful. We know what we almost lost. That makes everything sweeter. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, arriving at the cabin just as the moon reached its peak. Inside, the fire had burned low, but the warmth lingered. Eli added a log, while Clara moved through the familiar space, touching objects that had become dear to her. Sammy's wooden horse on the shelf, the quilt she'd helped make during a long winter evening, the stack of letters Eli had written that she kept by the bed and read every night. I have something for you. She turned to find Eli holding a small wooden box. What is it? Open it. She took the box and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in fabric, was a ring. Not the simple band they'd exchanged at the ceremony, but something more elaborate, a delicate silver band set with a small green stone. It was my mother's, Eli said quietly. My father gave it to her when they married. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to save it for the woman I loved. Eli, I should have given it to you 5 years ago. I didn't because we were young and poor, and I wanted to buy you something new, something that didn't carry someone else's history. He took the ring from the box and held it up. But now I understand. History isn't a burden, it's a gift. This ring has survived heartbreak and death and loss. It's been through fire and come out whole. He slipped it onto her finger next to the wedding band. Just like us. Clara stared at the ring, at the way the green stone caught the firelight, at the worn silver that told of decades of love. It's perfect. You're perfect. I'm really not. You're perfect for me. That's all that matters. She kissed him then, and he kissed her back, and for a long time there were no more words. Months turned into seasons. Summer came with its endless work cattle drives, fence repairs, the constant battle against the harsh Wyoming elements. Clara threw herself into ranch life with a determination that surprised even Eli. She learned to rope to brand to ride hard across open country without losing her seat. She learned to birth calves and doctor sick cattle and negotiate prices with the buyers who came through in autumn. And through it all, she never stopped being grateful. "You're staring again," Eli said one evening, finding her on the porch watching the sunset. "I can't help it." She smiled at him. "Even after all this time, I can't believe I'm really here." "Believe it. You're stuck with us now." "Best kind of stuck." Sammy burst through the door, nearly knocking them both over in his excitement. "Mama, Papa, come look." The barn cat had kittens. They followed him to the barn, where a proud orange tabby was nursing 4 tiny bundles of fur. "Can I keep one?" Sammy asked, his eyes enormous with hope. "Please, I'll take care of it myself. I'll feed it and brush it and teach it to catch mice." Eli looked at Clara. "Your call. 1 cat. 1. And if you don't take care of it properly." "I will. I promise." They let him stay in the barn to watch over his new responsibility, walking back to the cabin hand in hand. "We're going to end up with a dozen animals, aren't we?" Eli said. "Probably. Is that a problem?" "Not if it makes him happy." He paused. "Not if it makes you happy." "I'm already happy." Clara stopped and turned to face him. "I wake up every morning in a home I love, with a husband I love, and a son who calls me Mama without hesitation. I never thought I'd have any of this. Now I have all of it." "You deserve more." "I don't need more." She reached up to touch his face. "I need exactly this. Exactly what we have." Winter came again, fierce and unforgiving, but this time they were ready. The cabin was warm and well stocked. The cattle had been moved to sheltered pastures. And when the snow came down so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, the Mercer family stayed inside together, playing games and reading stories, and simply being. On Christmas Eve, they gathered around the fire, Eli in his chair, Clara on the small sofa, Sammy sprawled on the floor with his orange kitten, which he'd named Sunset. "Tell me the story again," Sammy said. "Which story?" "The story of how you found us, how you came back." Clara smiled. It had become a ritual, this telling. Sammy asked for it at least once a week, and she never refused. "Once upon a time," she began, "there was a woman who loved a man more than anything in the world. They had a beautiful son together, and they were very happy. But then the bad men came." "Yes. The bad men came and took the woman away. They locked her in a tower and told her she could never leave. But she didn't give up. She never gave up. Even when they told her terrible lies, even when they tried to make her forget, she held on to her love like a candle in the darkness." Sammy rolled onto his back, looking up at her. "And then she escaped. She escaped. She traveled across the whole country through snow and storms and danger because she had to find her family again. And she found us. She found you, standing on a train platform in the middle of nowhere. And when she saw you, she knew everything she'd survived had been worth it. Because we're a family. Because we're a family." Clara's voice thickened with emotion. "And families never give up on each other." Sammy was quiet for a moment. Then he sat up, his expression unusually serious for a 6-year-old. "Mama, I want to tell you something." "Anything, sweetheart." "I remember. Not everything. But I remember your voice. From when I was little." His eyes were bright with tears. "I used to hear you singing at night, in my dreams. I thought I was making it up. But it was real, wasn't it? It was you." Clara's heart stopped. "You remember. The song about the moon, the one you sing when I'm sick." He began to hum, slightly off key, but unmistakably the lullaby she'd sung to him as a baby. The lullaby she'd sung during his fever. The lullaby she'd thought he was too young to remember. "You remember," she whispered. "I never forgot. Even when I didn't know who you were, I never forgot your voice." He climbed up onto the sofa beside her, curling into her side. "I knew you'd come back. I always knew." Clara held him close, tears streaming down her face. Eli moved to sit beside them, wrapping his arms around both of them. "I think," Eli said quietly, "this might be the best Christmas we've ever had." "It's definitely the best one I've had in 5 years," Clara managed. "The best one ever," Sammy corrected, "because we're all together." They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn low, listening to the wind howl outside, feeling the warmth of their small, hard-won family. Later, after Sammy had been put to bed with sunset curled at his feet, Eli and Clara sat alone by the dying fire. "I have news," Clara said. "Good news or bad news. Depends on how you look at it." She took a deep breath. "I saw Mrs. Patterson yesterday. She confirmed what I suspected." Eli went still. "Confirmed what?" Clara took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We're going to have another baby." The world seemed to stop. We're in the summer, July probably." She watched his face anxiously. "I know it's sooner than we planned. I know things are still uncertain with the ranch, but—" He kissed her, cutting off her words, pulling her close with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "I love you," he said when they broke apart. "I love you, and I love Sammy, and I'm going to love this baby more than I can even imagine right now." "You're not worried." "I'm terrified, but that's part of being a parent, isn't it? You love them so much it scares you." He placed his hand over her stomach, his eyes shining. "A baby. Our baby. A little brother or sister for Sammy. He's going to be insufferable. He's been asking for a sibling since he learned the word." Clara laughed. "Maybe this time you won't miss anything. First kick, first word, first step. I won't miss a single moment." His voice was fierce with determination. "I swear to you, Clara, I'm going to be there for everything." "I know you will." They held each other as the fire turned to embers, as the night deepened around them, as the snow continued to fall. And Clara realized that the story she'd been telling Sammy wasn't really about a woman escaping from a tower. It was about something bigger than that, something more important. It was about the power of love to survive anything, to cross any distance, to heal any wound. She had traveled thousands of miles to find her way home. She had survived imprisonment and abuse and despair. She had clawed her way back from the edge of madness, and it had all been worth it. Every tear, every scar, every endless night of wondering if she'd ever see her family again. Worth it for this moment, this life, this love. Summer arrived with the baby, a girl they named Hope. She had her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes, and a cry loud enough to wake the dead. Sammy adored her. "I'm going to teach her everything," he announced, peering into her cradle with serious eyes. "How to ride and rope and read and catch fish. She's 3 days old, son. I'll wait until she's bigger, but then I'm teaching her everything." The ranch prospered. Eli's herd grew. Clara's reputation as someone who could doctor sick animals spread across the territory, and slowly, carefully, they built something permanent. A home. On a warm July evening, exactly 1 year after Hope's birth, the Mercer family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. Sammy sat on the steps, whittling a horse for his sister. Hope bounced on Clara's knee, grabbing for everything within reach. Eli leaned against the railing, his eyes soft as he watched his family. "Mama." Sammy looked up from his whittling. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are you happy?" Clara looked at her son, at her daughter, at her husband, at the home they'd built together, at the life they'd fought so hard to have. "I'm the happiest woman in the world." "Good." He returned to his carving. That's what I told Johnny Miller at school. He said nobody could be that happy. I told him he was wrong. Eli laughed. What did Johnny say to that? He said I was lying, so I punched him. Samuel. He deserved it. The boy's jaw set in a way that was purely his father's. Nobody calls my mama a liar. Clara exchanged a look with Eli, trying not to smile. We'll discuss appropriate responses to insults later, she said. But Sammy? Yeah. Thank you for defending me. He grinned, missing 2 front teeth. That's what families do. Clara pulled him close, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. On her lap, Hope gurgled happily. Eli moved to sit beside them, wrapping his arm around Clara's shoulders. This, Clara said softly, this is what I survived for, this exact moment. There'll be more moments, Eli promised. Thousands of them. Millions. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us. I know. She leaned into him, breathing in the scent of home. And I'm going to treasure every single one. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The first stars emerged bright and eternal, and in a small cabin on the Wyoming prairie, a family that had been broken watched the night arrive together whole at last. Clara had spent 4 years in darkness, dreaming of this light. She had crossed a continent to find it. She had fought an empire to keep it. And now finally, forever, she was home. The woman who stepped off that train in a torn wedding dress had been searching for her lost family. But she found something more than that. She found herself. She found her strength. She found a love that couldn't be broken by distance or time or cruelty. And she found the truth that would guide the rest of her life. Home isn't a place. It's the people who hold your heart. And once you find them, no force on earth can keep you apart. Not ever again.